welcome back to Comic Book Issues. I'm your host, The Last Angry Geek, and welcome to the March pull list. We're going to take another quick look at some of the comics I've been reading from the last week of February through the first 3 weeks of March. First up, it's Gold Digger number 250. Actually, there were 50 black and white issues before the color series, so it's about 300 issues at this point, and what a long, strange trip it's been. The series primarily follows two sisters, archaeologist Gina Diggers and her sister Brittany, who was adopted from a Were-Cheetah clan. She's kind of a shopaholic, but she's also a mother, and Gina's kind of this big nerd, but she's also a teacher, and there's a huge supporting cast of characters. Fred Perry is a great artist. He's a great writer. He always puts in a lot of pop culture references. You're going to have a lot of fun reading this book. That said, there are so many ongoing plot threads. There are so many supporting characters. It's almost too dense of a book to get into at this point. There's no real good jumping on point. At best, you can just pick an issue, start reading, and hope you get caught up fairly quickly. In fact, a lot of the early issues are free to read right now at Antarctic Press. So if you Google Gold Digger free comics, you'll be able to find them and read them at your leisure. This issue follows up from the previous issue, which introduced this cosplay credit union that lets its bankers dress up as like Star Wars characters, and they teach Brittany about managing her credit and getting her debt down. She introduces Gina to it, and as a nerd, she loves it. But unfortunately, the owner of the credit union, or the president of the credit union, turns out to be a robot, and he's reprogrammed to try and kill her by this ancient death trap maker who builds all these, complex death traps in the ruins that Gina investigates. That's another one of these long ongoing plot threads that I kind of wish Fred would start wrapping up so we could get a little fresher take on some of these stories. I just think he needs to end the ancient Gina versus Dreadwing the Dragon thing, and the trap maker who's really a robot, or maybe not, I don't know. There's so many balls being juggled in this book. If you know what's going on, you're going to have a fun time each issue. If you don't, my suggestion, skip it, or dive head in and just try and just start absorbing it through osmosis. Because once you're in sync with Gold Digger, you're going to have a lot of fun with this book. Next is Detective Comics 975, and we're nearing the end of James Tynion's run on this book, and it has been so much fun. I never thought that Detective Comics would be my favorite DC title, and it isn't anymore, but for a long time it was. Mr. Miracle is my favorite DC book right now. But this has just been so good. It's about Team Batman. Batman and Batwoman form a team to take on bigger threats in Gotham. Spoiler, Cassandra Cain, Robin, Tim Drake, Azrael, Batwing, Clayface. They're all members of this team. Now, one of the interesting things about this book is that we've always thought of Bruce Wayne as being alone, but Tynion kind of shows that he did have his cousin Kate. And they kind of sometimes explore that relationship. For instance, in this book, there's a flashback to when Kate's mother died, and Bruce, having lost his parents, is trying to give her advice on how to deal with it and how to handle it. But from her military family and her influencing her as a child, she automatically has kind of a different response to it than Bruce does. Tynion really gets both Batwoman and Tim Drake. I feel like he's writing some of the best Batwoman and Tim Drake Robin stories I've read. It is coming to an end, but it's a lot of fun. This issue deals with the ramifications of the previous issue where she had to shoot Clayface because he was on a rampage. He was out of control, and she shoots him to save lives. It was a bad thing done for the right reasons. And he brings in Nightwing, Red Hood, Damian, Batgirl. So if you're going to have guest stars in a book this dense with this many characters already, at least they've got something to say. He's kind of convening this council of his sidekicks to kind of help him come to terms. Should he cut Batwoman loose, or should he try and save her and keep this team going? The one character who he doesn't write very well is Batman. I think he kind of leaves Batman as a cipher for the others to react to, because maybe he doesn't want to trample on what Scott Snyder's doing. So Batman is a bit aloof in this book, but he really writes the other characters very well. My suggestion, read this book, but you might want to start right from the beginning, because it is one hell of a ride, and it is coming to an end. We've got a couple books that are ending on this this particular episode of the pull list. First up, Hawkeye 16. Now, Kelly Thompson was basically trying to redo Matt Faction's take on Kate Bishop when she broke from Clint and went to LA to be a detective. She kind of picks up that idea and goes with it, and it's okay. It's not as good as what Matt Fraction was doing, and frankly, if I had to choose a book about a teen female hero to keep going, I would have kept Unstoppable Wasp and let Hawkeye get canceled earlier. But say la vie, I'm glad they brought Clint in for the finale. Her supporting cast, all these teen characters, they never really gelled for me. I couldn't name one of them if I had to. This is kind of the final battle between Clint's enemy and Madame Mask, who's been Kate's kind of archenemy in this series, and going back to the Matt Fraction series. We don't really get a lot of resolution. Things just kind of end. The fight ends. We learn that her boyfriend has powers, but it's not really explained. Madame Mask and the bad guys just kind of leave. Her dad, who is a supervillain, leaves. Her mom is alive, but we don't get any, interaction between her and Kate. So it just kind of all stops in this issue. And it's a little unsatisfying. Kelly Thompson has promised us more Kate Bishop in the future. I hope it's a new take on her, because this rehashing of what Matt Fraction did just really didn't work. It was okay, it just wasn't anything special. Suggestion? Skip it. Superman 42. Now, at one point, Superman by Gleason and Tomasi was probably one of my favorite books from the Rebirth era. It was up there with Detective Comics. Not so much anymore. It's still a good read, but I think they lost something when they moved the Kents out of their farm. I want to say it was in Kansas, but it could have been somewhere else, to Metropolis. And I liked the rural lifestyle. I liked them on a farm. I love Mom Lois. She's just so much... She's the woman who can intimidate Superman. Now she's using all that power to, kind of shape their son. And John's a fun character. Clark's just a great dad. So it's kind of nice to see a healthy family in the DC universe. This issue introduces us to the Bizarro family. And I guess Bizarro isn't a failed clone from Forever Evil anymore. But there's Bizarro, Bizarro Lois, and Bizarro Superboy. It's the first couple of pages are kind of hard to get through because it's just the Bizarros talking, and they have that reverse language. Me, not happy to see you. Goodbye! And that's okay when it's one Bizarro talking to a bunch of normal characters, but when they're all talking like that, you kind of got to take each word balloon, translate it, get the meaning, and then move on to the next word balloon or sentence or what have you. So this one was a little hard to get through dialogue-wise, those first couple of pages. The co-writer Patrick Gleason draws this one. He's okay, but for Superman, I prefer Doug Mahnke as the artist. The next issue is better, so yeah, my suggestion, buy it, but you might want to go back and reread some of the previous stuff, because I think that was better than what the book currently is. The Manchester Black storyline was probably my favorite. I reviewed the Rebirth, the Superman Reborn story on Comic Book Issues, so you can go check out that review if you want to know what they've been doing in the book. Next is World of Krypton, #1, and this was a free comic book they were giving out to promote the Krypton series that Sci-Fi is airing. There was a new cover on it, but it's actually just a reprint of World of Krypton #1 from the 1980s, and that's written by John Byrne and drawn by Mike Mignola, so nothing wrong with that. Two of the best creators of all time. It kind of goes back into the past and shows what Krypton was before, it started blowing up. Well before that. This is Krypton as a society with no impending doom looming over everyone's head. So we get to see this world, and there's, how Byrne writes it is, until you're an adult, you're not recognized as your own person. You're the son of this. That's why he said son of Jor-El. That's because he wasn't recognized as an adult. Mignola's 80 art isn't nearly as stylized and polished as it is in like the later Hellboy stuff, but it's still pretty damn good. You can see signs of his future brilliance. I do a lot with my hands in these reviews, but that's just me. John Byrne relaunched Superman in the 80s with the Man of Steel series, and World of Krypton kind of follows up on some of the ideas he had for Krypton. The first issue shows that there's a brewing concern over the rights of clones. Do they have rights? Or are they just there to be harvested for organs for their Kryptonian patrons, parts of the Clonosaur? The idea of clone rights might seem a little old right now, but it was pretty fresh back in the 80s. Suggestion? It's free. Why not? It's two of the best comic book creators of all time telling the tale of Krypton's past. Pick it up. Check it out. I don't think you'll be sorry. Astonishing XMen #9. That's being written by Charles Soule, and he's been using a series of rotating artists. Like first issue was Jim Chung, then Lionel Francis Yu, and they keep putting like a list artists, but they're kind of running out of them, so it's been kind of more average B and C list artists. A team of X-Men get assembled by Professor X, who's still alive in the astral plane and fighting the Shadow King. So he assembles these X-Men to bring them into the astral plane to fight the Shadow King. Now, by this point in the story, he's free, the Shadow King is destroyed, and he switches his mind with Phantom X, who wants to stay in the astral plane. So now he's back in this fresh body with powers, and he's calling himself X. He's the man called X, which is the name of the current story arc. But Prometheus is also back, so this hastily assembled team of X-Men is now going to fight this reality-warping mutant who wants to merge the astral and physical plane. Now, that's an okay action story, but there's not really too much characterization. The only ones I really feel like Charles Soule is getting right are Psylocke and Professor X. Everyone else, it just feels like they're just running along. We got to stop this guy and get him. And Old Man Wolverine, Bishop, Gambit, Rogue, Archangel, Mystique, I forget who else. So it's an okay book, but my suggestion, skip it. I don't think you're going to get too much out of this title. Mighty Crusaders #4. Now, back in 2012, there was this book that came out called The New Crusaders. Archie was relaunching their heroes from the 60s in this line, and it told this great story written by Ian Flynn about the last generation of heroes getting wiped out and their children having to take over for them, and it was a great origin story. We got to know all these characters, and then they finally have their first kind of adventure, and it kind of ends in disaster. And I wanted a sequel so bad, and then they canceled it. And they relaunched Red Circle Comics as Dark Circle Comics because dark sells. And they had some critically acclaimed books, but I don't think they sold very well. So Archie finally decided to bring back the Crusaders as the Mighty Crusaders, once again written by Ian Flynn. And it wasn't as good. The story wasn't there. We were just thrown into the action. We didn't get a chance to re-meet these characters. We didn't get a chance to really kind of get to know any of them except the Shield, but not the Shield from the previous book, the Shield from Dark Circle Comics, who was brought in by the old Shield to be the leader, but she was the original Shield, but she inspired him to be the Shield, but now that she's back, she's leading. I'm confused too. So the art wasn't as good either. I don't know who was drawing these books, but it wasn't as good as the previous artist, who, and again, I can't name him off the top of my head, but, you know, I was willing to stick with it because I figured once we get through the first couple issues, Ian Flynn will slow down and we'll get a chance to know these characters again, and hopefully he can recapture the magic of New Crusaders. And then I get to the last page of issue 4 and it says, not the end, never the end. But yeah, it's the end. They canceled it again. Fuck you, Archie! Suggestion, skip it. It wasn't any good. Go reread New Crusaders. It's on Comixology. That is a great book. Hey guys, next up is Avengers 685, which is the 11th part of the No Surrender storyline, which is running across all 4 Avengers books. Avengers, USA Avengers, Uncanny Avengers, and there's a 4th one. Basically, all the Avengers teams and a few other are assembled to kind of take on this alien menace. The Lethal Legion and some of Thanos' old cronies are fighting across Earth to get their hands on these little pyramid crystals in the hopes of whoever gets the most wins kind of thing. And it turns out it's being set up by the Grandmaster and his opponent, the Challenger, who is the former Grandmaster, his brother, and he wants the title back. So they've each got their own team, and whoever gets the most points wins. And the Avengers are just trying to stop them from wrecking the Earth as they do this. And they decide to start getting the crystals on their own, thinking they can upset things, because I think they learned at some point that no matter who gets the most crystals, the Earth is going to be destroyed. So we get to meet a new character in this, a new Avenger, a lost Avenger named Voyager, who actually reminds me a lot of Sentry. She's got the yellow outfit, she's got white hair. Nobody remembers her until they see her, but then everybody remembers her from the past as one of the founding members of the Avengers. But we know that's not the case. Jarvis goes down, the man who knows the Avengers better than anybody, so they're trying to save his life at the same time as they're trying to stop these aliens from destroying the Earth. It's a fun enough storyline. This issue sees the return of the Hulk, they've been teasing it for a few issues. Grandmaster's brother kind of clicks his finger and brings the Hulk back to life, so he's going on a rampage. He takes on the Red Hulk in Iron Man armor from USA Avengers. He takes on another longtime Avengers member, destroys them. Wow, he's just unstoppable at this point. And they say he's the Immortal Hulk, which is going to lead into the relaunched Marvel title, Immortal Hulk. This is basically a way to bring all the Avengers books to an end before the Marvel relaunch that's coming up. One cool thing is seeing characters like Sunspot and Rogue, who are longtime X-Men characters, leading the Avengers. So I like that kind of mix that we're seeing characters outside of the Avengers canon as Avengers. Not only that, but as leading the Avengers. That's cool. Having the Hulk back and kind of as the angry giant rather than as a helpful member of the team is cool too. This is a fun book. If you're not familiar with some of the Avengers titles, you might be confused with some of the Avengers characters like I am with the USA Avengers, because a lot of those are new characters and I don't know them or their backstory. But overall, this is just a fun kind of save the planet adventure. My suggestion, wait for a collection or a sale on Comixology, unless you're already reading one or more of the Avengers books. In that case, you've probably been reading No Surrender, just like I have. Well, that's it for the March pull list. I'll see you next month for the last week of March and the first couple of weeks of April. Until then, this is Comic Book Issues, and I'm your host, The Last Angry Geek.